Hey guys, welcome back to the Tough Love Podcast with Dr. John O'Connor. Today's podcast is called Addition by Subtraction. And what we're going to talk about is in business, sometimes you got to take a look at what you're trying to do and, what used to work, may not work anymore. And I'm sitting with an amazing brandologist or marketing team, as well as my current team. And as we're looking at technology and everything that I'm seeing from my business coaching group, the Elliott Group and Andy Elliott, we're realizing that technology can save us a huge amount of money. And, I was talking about this in a previous episode that I got pulled into a new company called Boost Anti-Aging. And, it's a HRT company and men and women's health and optimization. But this story today starts with our original company, Velocity Performance. And I think all of us as business owners, as we get older, you should be getting wiser. And, if your team around you, I saw a great quote today or a post by Alex Hormozy. It's not necessarily having a huge team, and that's what we used to have. It's about having the right players. And when you have the right team, you could have 3 or 4 people that move like 20 or 30. And, I've been on both sides of that. When we were looking at consolidating to one location, there was probably one of the most historic days in business that we've ever had, that happened and occurred last Friday. We closed the location at the Ford Athletic Club. We opened a location in Old Bridge with a partnership team. And then we reconfigured a location in Red Bank all in one day. And that's our original location. We own that building. It's a great location. It was done magnificently by the brandologist or, Cheryl that we use. It's done all my branding over the years, and another interior decorator, a good construction company. So it's a beautiful space, almost timeless. And, the one thing that we were saying over the last 4 or 5 years, we've been extremely wasteful, and technology is going to be eliminating a lot of these people that have been, quite honestly, greedy. When you look at the numbers and what they charge, they're going to go away because we can do it so much faster and so much cheaper. We were talking to our communications guy today that does all our phone systems, and we'll use secure Wi-Fi and technology for our Old Bridge location out of Powerhouse, up of Route 9 for the Boost location that's opening. And it's amazing how much money that'll save a month. And, when we start looking at these things, we're gaining so much, because before it was like you had to have all these things. You had to check the box. You had to have the phone systems. You had to have all these workers. And sadly enough, I think there's so many business owners and businesses that break and go out of business because we do so much to run with the Joneses that we don't sit there and really analyze that bottom line. One of the things that I see when I'm coaching practices around the country is their resistance to change. And, being a coach, you're not always going to be able to strike that warm, fuzzy feeling on players or practices or, doctors for that matter. Sometimes you got to crack the whip. And I found with the 4 or 5 practices that I had in the first quarter or the first 2 months of the year, 4 of the 5 of them did an amazing job. And I think I wasn't prepared for the other one because I wasn't ready for the fact that they weren't going to change. And, and no matter what I said or did or however I approached it, I think that was something that was a coachable moment for me, that I even talked to the company that I work with. And, they kind of reassured me that, hey, sometimes everything can be right, but it failed. And that's what made me think about and reflect about today's podcast in having, if you look back to, we're in April of the year 2025. If you look back to April of 2023, I had 3 practices going. I had an army of workers, and it was probably the lowest I've ever been in bank accounts and money and everything, because we did everything right, but it was all wrong. On paper, it looked great, but as far as I should not say on paper with the accounting, it was an atrocity. But if you looked at it, we had beautiful locations, we had magnificent equipment, we had state-of-the-art technology, and we were getting crushed. And the one thing that I'm staring at as I'm watching all of these amazing influencers that are ultimately really successful business people is they said something really important. Whatever business you're in, don't spread out so far that you're diluted. Stay locked in, stay in that circle of expertise and crush it. And that was really something that resonated, that at first I was, really upset myself that I had to close these locations, all the money lost in equipment, the people that lost jobs, the amount of liquidity that we lost, that, we started really going backwards. And I don't care how tough you are mentally, physically, financially, that was something that was really breaking me. And then when I really sat down and talked to some really sharp people, especially a new coaching group that I deal with, this is the best move I could ever made. It allows me to be more nimble and coach. It allows me to pursue the opportunity I got pulled into with Boost Medical. And it allowed me to focus on having one practice location as we transition from, that huge in-network conglomerate that, runs, like an old diesel, like a sloppy engine, into a streamlined, efficient machine that's much more efficient, offers better care, and probably most importantly to the providers, it's much more profitable. I hate to say it, but if you take people that are frustrated in the healthcare system because they're overworked and underpaid, they're probably giving bad care, right? And, so if they're well compensated, and they're not working the skin off the end of their fingers, I think they're going to give better care. And that's the model that we realized, that I'm like, I don't want to sit there and be proud of myself that I opened up all these locations and be pulling my hair out that they're not running well, they're not running efficiently, or there needs managers to run each location. I don't want that anymore. I checked the boxes. I had one of the largest locations in Monmouth County at Velocity Freehold. The fort was probably one of the nicest spaces that I ever could have outfitted. But you can't account for, Lifetime Fitness opening up the road and literally vacuuming out all your business. And, and these things happened, and, you can't control, you can't control what you can't control. And as I reflect on it, I would tell all of you, if you guys are considering growing, make sure that your business that you have, the core business, is bulletproof. Can you step out, and does it still produce? Do you have systems in place that, if you want to go away for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, that you're ironclad and your revenue's coming in and you don't have to have a heart attack, that you can't be away from your business? And all of those things came into play. And, I have to say that if I was saying this right now and it was 3 or 4 years ago, 2 to 4 years ago, I would be broken from that. And, I had to, and I had somebody tell me, and I can't remember off the top of my head who it was, but they nailed it. They were like, listen, if you're going to be the business, then you have to make a serious decision. You can't do both. You can't expand everywhere, because if you can't reproduce you, then you're doomed for failure. And I think ego got the best of me, because when, I'm definitely the kind of person, if you tell me I can't, I'm definitely the kind of person that says, watch me. And unfortunately, that attitude almost broke me, and, and my family and everybody around me. And so I think that's a big, piece of advice that I would give you. I mean, I see people all the time, take on business opportunities, and they're just not paying attention. And then the other thing that I would strongly urge you, and gotten great advice from friends younger and older, is make sure that you have the amount of free time that you want. And if you're making enough money, and that time part, which you can't buy back, right? You can buy new cars, you can buy new houses, you can go to different restaurants and vacation spots. But if you lose time from working every day. It's gone, right? It's the time you miss with your family, with your, your wife, your spouse, your husband, your boyfriend, girlfriend, your kids, and you can't have it back, And, so that was one thing that I really started thinking about when I started going pen to paper and weighing out what I wanted to do. Today was the first day that we had, all the businesses roll out, and, we're basically troubleshooting the one and just make sure it's streamlined to be open for May. And then the other ones were, kind of closing up and doing what they were doing. And it was great to watch. It was like, that evolution that occurred needed to happen. And I have to tell you, I feel like I walked through, a volcano, and an erupting volcano, no less, to get there. But I'm beyond proud of that. And I said, that's, addition by subtraction, reducing down and getting rid of things that were no longer serving me financially, serving, my family, my wife, anybody. And I think that when you get those kind of things situated, it's amazing how much more clear you become. And I see it when I'm working on patients. I see my level of communication is better. And again, I was kind of shocked by how much stress I put on my body during the last 3 weeks of the fitness show, the men's physique show that I went for. I obviously never did that before. I'm looking forward to doing another one. I'm definitely going for my pro card in the next, within the next year. And, the one thing that I would say is that last 3 weeks, that last 21 days to a month was grueling. And for those of you, and this is a part of the clip that I'm going to tell my guys to make sure you definitely cut out and listen. That is discipline on a whole nother level. You are starving all the time. You are burning fat throughout your entire body. You are depleted beyond depleted. And, and you're at the mercy of, your coach, basically, as they are calling it, dialing you in for the competition, which really means starving you out. And, and as I was, going through that, I realized, I'm like, wow, you know what? I had record numbers in the clinic. I had the best April that I've had in years, and, won the show. And there was a little bit of a, fallout afterwards. My body was rocked for sure for a week and a half. But as I'm snapping out of it, the one thing that I realized is if I would have had all those locations up and the stress of people just arbitrarily taking off, quitting, the shifts, the energies, people fighting, I would have never made it. There's enough on my plate between my mom battling breast cancer and my dad's failing health and everything that I have going on personally, making sure my kids are in line, make sure everybody's happy and everything's going on well with my wife. You have to remember those are a lot of things to touch on a regular basis. And when I was doing that fitness competition, I started thinking, I'm like, you know what? I don't want to be busy like that anymore. I love the level of, chaos that I have, but that level of chaos didn't serve me. Again, it's nice to go and see people and they compliment you that you're growing, expanding, but that expansion comes at a price that I think a lot of people don't realize how much you really got to pay out of your own soul and energy. And so again, I'm beyond thankful to have kind of reduced down to what we consider like where it all started. And we're actually working on a new branding campaign for the facility because we're looking for a name change, but also because it's kind of the Mecca, right? It's kind of where it all started for us. I mean, we were thinking about it the other day, we treated over 20,000 patients out of this facility. And now with regards to, combining locations and the new medical group and everything that's going on, we're in a situation that we could be set up for the next 10 years, just crushing it. And, I have no desire to go and build out any more of those performance centers. I'm not opposed to looking at where the anti-aging and the hormone optimization goes. It's different. It's amazing, helping to transform people. And the neat thing is, I'm a chiropractor, I'm part of the business and watching these medical teams do wonderful work for people, building their confidence and self-esteem, changing their lives, making them feel great about themselves. And that transformative process is something that I don't mind pursuing because I think everybody needs that. Everybody needs that feel-good option. And I think that, people will pay for positive change. And because again, it's an investment in themselves, right? And if you feel good, you're going to project good. You're going to work harder. You're going to be a better spouse, we hope, right? You're going to do things that are going to make you a better person, a better coworker, a better parent, a better mom, a better dad, a better husband, a better wife. And, just being part of watching these people be happier about themselves, the outward projection is just, it's just really made me kind of a rebirth, if you will. And that's one thing that I loved when we hired Andy Elliott as a business coach, that total transformation. And that's kind of what, today's about is, reducing down, cutting the fat with the businesses that we had that were no longer serving us, and even giving my team a heads up, like, hey, our goal is to have one location, have it be super impressive, super busy, be able to serve, the population that knows what we are. They respect the product that we put out there, and at the same time, constantly upgrade what we do and make sure that we are growing at a level that's, beyond what people expect, So I'm excited about that. I'm excited about the change. I'm excited about everything going on. And it wouldn't have started without making, better decisions and really thinking about where I want to be in the next 6 months, year, and beyond that. And that's what I encourage all of you today as you're listening to this podcast. If you're going through a transitional time, think about how you're enjoying your free time. Or do you not have any? Are you constantly rushing around? Do you feel like you're just making, ends meet? Are you not getting enough quality time with your friends, your family, your husband, your wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever that is? And if those things are reoccurring, then it's time for a change. And that's really what I was looking at. And that's what kind of brought me to the boiling point that I was at, is that I want to get to a point where, I'm consulting, I'm working, I'm grinding at my pace. I'm not moving at other people's paces and forced to be in a frenzy because of desperation. And I think as we're gaining momentum and again, unbelievable first quarter, a lot of great news, things happen today in the practice, all amazing, that's where that transformative process happens. But you have to make a mind shift. You have to go from, thinking that there's no way out to saying, let me look at what options I have to change what I'm doing and reducing expenses, doing all these different things to lighten the burden, so that then you're playing like, I'd rather always tell people, like when I was coaching basketball or training basketball players, play like you're up, play like you're up 20, play like you're winning. Okay. And you're playing loose, you're playing with your head up. If you're getting blown out and you're down by 40 and you see both people, same person, two different emotions, one person's probably going to have their shoulders down, their heads down, and they're embarrassed, right? And you see the person that's up 30 or 40, they're seeing everything, their adrenaline's up. And that's the approach that we're taking right now, is like, we're up 30 and, we got the foot on the gas and we're looking to rock and roll. And I think once we made that mind shift, it seems like everything's going better. Doors are opening. And that's what I encourage you guys, right? Take a look in the mirror. And if you're not happy, look at the steps around you that you can do and change to get to where your happy is. Hey guys, thanks for joining us on the podcast today. I really enjoyed this conversation with regards to talking about real talk, real business, really when you make mistakes, how do you correct them? How do you get back on track? And how do you get to a higher level than you've been at before? And I feel like the path that we're on right now is one that you definitely want to keep your eye on. And I have to tell you, if it wasn't going all the way to the bottom, I don't believe that we could get to where we're at in a position now to be rising to the top. So thank you so much for joining us today. We'll see you again next week. God bless. And please make sure to follow us on all of our social media platforms. Take care. We'll see you again soon.